So think of all the animals that haven't been studied at all. And of course, the big problem is that out in Africa and many other parts of the world, animals are becoming more and more endangered as human populations grow and as the wilderness areas are shrinking, habitats are destroyed, chimpanzees are losing their forests, they are being hunted, part of the bushmeat trade, which is the commercial hunting of wild animals for food, and it includes elephants, gorillas, chimpanzees, birds, bats, anything that can be dried, and it's now expanded hugely because foreign logging companies have gone into Africa and into other developing countries, and they've made roads deep into previously inaccessible forests, and hunters go along the roads and shoot everything and can truck it into the towns. So chimpanzees, as a mixture of losing their habitat and being hunted, have dropped in number from somewhere between 1 and 2 million to about 250,000, and the 250,000 are spread right across Africa, many of them in tiny patches of forest where they can't exchange genes with other groups, so in the long run, inbreeding will mean that they gradually disappear. Even the Gombe chimps are threatened like that. In fact, we would lose the Gombe chimps in that tiny 30 square mile national park, except that we began working to help the local people, the people in the villages around, who were actually struggling to survive, because as their numbers increased and as refugees moved in from Burundi and Congo, DRC, the habitat was being completely destroyed. The very steep hillsides were being, the trees were being cut down either for firewood or charcoal, or just simply to make space to grow crops. And as the farmers moved into steeper and steeper, more impossible areas for farming, so the soil got degraded and was washed down into the lake. And it was very clear there was no way we could save the chimpanzees when the people were in such a terrible situation. So we began our Take Care program, which is improving the lives of people in the villages in a very holistic way. And you can find out about that program on the website. But it's everything from tree nurseries, new farming methods most suitable to this land, working with women, letting them take out tiny loans to start their own environmentally sustainable projects, keeping girls in school. And we work a lot with women because all over the world, as women's education increases, family size tends to drop. And of course, this is really important in places where the population has exploded for a whole variety of reasons. So because of our Take Care program, the people are now our partners, they support us, they're working to protect their watersheds and to reforest their slopes, and this is giving some hope to the Gombe chimpanzees. And again, I put all this in a nutshell, but there's lots of information. I think you've got to take care on the janegoodall.ca website, and Adna and Jane and everybody can tell you all about this program. It's very exciting, and it's being replicated in Uganda and in Democratic Republic of Congo and the Republic of Congo, and probably soon in other places too. So I left the forests of Gombe to travel the world 300 days a year in 1986. And it was after going to a conference in the US where all the different people studying chimpanzees came together to talk about what was going on in their particular study sites. And that's when I realized the plight of the chimpanzees and how they were disappearing and how the forests were disappearing. And I learned something about the conditions in medical research labs and the cruel training of entertainment chimpanzees. And so I went to the conference as a scientist, I had my PhD and everything, it was a wonderful life. And I left as an activist or advocate because I had to. I didn't make a decision, I just knew the time had come that I had to talk about these things. And as I was going around the world talking about what was going wrong, talking about the pollution, the poisoning of the air, the water and the land, learning more and more about climate change and global warming, learning more about the cruelties that we see around the world, not just to each other, but to animals too. And I kept meeting young people your age who seemed to me to have not too much hope in the for their future. And some of them were depressed, some were angry, some were just, well, it doesn't seem to matter what we do. And they told me, these young people, all over the world this is, more or less the same thing. We feel like this because we feel that what you've done has harmed our future and there's nothing we can do about it. And yes, we have harmed your future. If I think of how the world has changed since I was your age, it makes me feel a bit desperate. But it's not true that there's nothing that can be done about it. And that's what Roots and Shoots is all about. That's why Roots and Shoots began in 1991. And it began with 12 high school students, just 12, from 9 different schools. And they sat on my veranda in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania. And we talked about the problems. In that case, it was dynamiting fish and poaching in the national parks and street children and things like that. And they decided that as their government wasn't doing much about these things, they wanted to. So that's how Roots and Shoots began. 12 high school students. And today it's in 126 countries. That's a lot of countries. It's got about 16,000 active groups, and it's preschool and all the way through very strong in university. And more grown-ups are wanting to form groups and are forming groups and things like thinking about projects to help people, to help animals, to help the environment. And running through all of it is a theme of living in peace and harmony, not only with each other, but also with the natural world. Somehow we've got to make a balance. Somehow we have to make space. Somehow we've got to resolve the conflicts, such as the one going on here with the coyotes. We have to find a way that we can live in harmony with nature. And I was made a UN Messenger of Peace because of Roots and Shoots, because Roots and Shoots is about breaking down the barriers that we build between people of different cultures, different religions, different nations, but also between us and Mother Nature. And so we support the UN International Peace Day, which is in September, by flying giant peace staffs made out of sheets and poles. You can see them on the website. And we did that in 40 countries last year. So the Giant Peace Staff Day is bringing together young people all around the world, dreaming about a world of peace. And we all want peace, don't we? We all know the conflicts that are going on, and we hate them, whether they're in our own country with gang warfare, or whether it's an international conflict. So Roots and Shoots, about breaking down barriers, about getting out there, about rolling up your sleeves, about doing something to help an issue that you feel passionate about. Some of you may feel passionate about animals, not all of you. Some may feel passionate about the human community. Some of you may want to make sure that streams that are dirty get cleaned, or that you clean up a place that's covered with litter, or learn to write letters to legislators, ask them to please make a law that stops the use of some kind of pesticide that's causing cancer. And don't forget, if they do, if those legislators do take your side and start a fight, do thank them, because so often people complain and forget to thank when things go right, and it's very important to thank people when they've made an effort for you. So Roots and Shoots, the last thing I'll say about it is, why is it called Roots and Shoots? Maybe some of you have a favorite tree. Well, think of your tree when it started to grow. Mine is an English oak, and it's a little acorn like that. And when that little acorn starts to grow, it's going to become a mighty tree, and it can live for, hundreds of years. This is how it begins. And you can pick that little growing seed with its tiny little roots and its little shoot in your fingers, and it seems so small and weak. But you know, there's a life force, a magic, an energy in that little seed that is so powerful that those little roots, to reach the water, can work through rocks and eventually push them aside. And that little shoot to reach the sunlight can work through cracks in a brick wall and eventually knock it down. So you imagine the rocks and the walls are all the problems that we humans have inflicted on poor old Mother Earth, the environmental ones and the social ones. It's about hope. Roots and Shoots is about hope. Hundreds and thousands of young people like you around the world can break through and make this a better world for all living things. And it's what gives me the energy to carry on, because everywhere I go, I find groups of young people with shining eyes of all ages wanting to tell Dr. Jane what they've been doing to make the world a better place, what they plan to do to make the world a better place. And it's very, it gives me a lot of energy, and it gives me a lot of hope. And the hope lies in the fact that we have this amazing brain. Our brains around the world are beginning to work a little bit harder because we do understand that we've harmed the planet. We do know about global warming. We do know some of the bad things. And so our brains are working a bit faster. You all know about the technologies, the alternative energy, different ways that we can do things to be less environmentally destructive, but also in our own lives. The little decisions we can make each day, which means that our footprint on the planet is lighter and more sustainable. And so the human brain is the reason for hope. But then also there's the resilience of nature. I bet you all know a place that's once been destroyed and ugly, and it's been given time or perhaps some help, and life can come back. And it may not be quite like it was before, but once again it can be beautiful, and birds and little mammals and insects can live there again. And animal species on the very brink of extinction can be given another chance. And there's a book I'd like to make you all to make sure you get in your school libraries. It's called Hope for Animals and Their World. It's the last book I did, and the reason I want you to ensure that your libraries have it is because every single story is inspirational. I got so inspired talking to these people all around the world who decided that this animal should not become extinct, that this ecosystem should be restored. And you will be amazed at some of these stories. It's really exciting.